But ownership isn't necessarily about the things that we have or the things that we purchased. Ownership sometimes is the responsibility that we take as leaders for the words that come out of our mouth, the behavior in our life, the attitudes that we possess. And ownership really is the currency of maturity. But I want to talk to you more about what that ownership looks like, what that maturity looks like, what that means to a leader, and how valuable it is in their life. Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast. 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and it seems really odd to say that ownership is a currency of maturity, but if you look back on all the times in your life that you felt like that person will not admit that they were wrong, that individual just cannot say, I did it. They're unwilling to admit that they're the problem in the fight. They're the problem in the relationship. They're the reason that our productivity is offline. They stand behind everything that benefits them, that suits them, but they got nothing to say when it requires them having, a little humility. The ability to go, I did that. Remember Urkel? Urkel was the guy that would do something that would be malicious, or it would seem that it was malicious, and it would drop somebody else's cake, knock their books out of their hands, run into somebody in the hallway. These are the kind of things that Urkel would do. If you don't know who Urkel is, go to YouTube, type in Urkel. I don't know how to spell it. Play with it. I'm sure you'll find it. But Urkel would do all these obnoxious things and these little TV sitcoms for kids. Saved by the Bell, I think, was one of them, back in the day when I was a kid. But Urkel would always ask the question, did I do that? Did I do that? See, when we think of people who do things that are malicious, unintentionally even, when they cut you off in traffic and they're like, oh, sorry, what do we say? That's an immature jerk, right? Doesn't matter if it's male or female, older or younger. It doesn't matter who they are. If they do things that are selfish, to the destruction or damage or detriment of other people, that comes across to all of us as immature. Would you agree? When people play gags on one another, when they do things to embarrass or upstage someone else, we might say it's sophomoric, meaning they all act like they're still in the 10th grade. Kids, childlike, childish, immature. But see, as we age, not only chronologically, but maturity that comes with the experiences of life, most leaders get beyond that stuff. Most leaders get beyond the gags and the pranks and the humiliating others for the sake of their own will, but some don't. And sometimes it looks like, Enron is a good example. Enron was a really good example of a bunch of people taking other people's money to build their own wealth and their own fortune. Many of them are in prison now. Many of them have paid very hefty fines now. But their selfishness, their behavior that only benefited them, was a very immature act. It wasn't good leadership at all. They scammed hundreds, if not thousands, of people out of their money to make themselves wealthy. That's immature. That's not good leadership. So when you have good leadership, you take ownership of your own mistakes. You raise your hand and go, that was my fault. I made the wrong product decision. I took it to the wrong market. I took it to market at the wrong time. I hired that individual. My bad. I'll pay the fines for whatever has happened as a result of that. And sometimes we have to realize as leaders that the price we're going to have to pay is pretty significant. We may be the one that has to step down if we've led our company down a bad path. We may be the one that has to back up and go, you know what? This is going to take some penance, if you will. This is going to take some undoing. And part of that undoing is going to cost me financially, relationally, maybe even cost me my job. But the right thing to do as a leader, the mature thing to do as a leader, is to take ownership of what's gone wrong. But let me also say that leaders who are mature also take ownership of their successes. Because there is something going on in our country today where there's this, I don't even know what you want to call it, it's an abstract sense that when the team wins, everybody wins at exactly the same level. Now, Imagine a sports team of any caliber, a football team, a volleyball team, a basketball team, a softball team. When you get to the final championships, there's almost always what we would call the MVP, the most valuable player. Well, how do they designate the most valuable player? They look for the individual who has contributed the most, made the most sacrifices, taken the most punishment, thrown the most pitches, thrown the most touchdowns, caught the most touchdowns, run the most yards, made the most tackles. Whatever measurement of success there is in that accomplishment, that individual is going to be an MVP. But that doesn't seem to happen at the regular levels of society. Instead, what we have is this: everybody gets a trophy, everybody wins. It doesn't happen that way in the real world. In the real world, you can't just say, well, we all win, and so it's all equal. Well, no, that's why paychecks are different. That's why opportunities are different. That's why promotions exist. That's why there are certain levels at which you get another promotion and you get a little more of a paycheck and you get a little more of a substantial office perhaps, or more perks with your job. Everybody didn't contribute the same amount of energy, effort, intellect, wisdom, knowledge, ability, talent. Not everybody has that. And if you as a leader don't have the maturity to take ownership of your success and go, here's what I did, here's what you're missing. You ready for this? When you don't have the maturity to say, here's what I did and why we won and what was different, then you don't have the ability to either strategize for the next win or to teach those tactics to the ones coming behind you so that they can duplicate them. How many times have you heard, especially when we talk about things like crime and poverty and homelessness, how many times have you heard someone say, well, but I grew up without a father in my home? Well, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. Because fathers and mothers, parents, are generally the ones who say, here's what I did wrong. Here's the mistakes that I made. Don't make those same mistakes. But they also are the ones to say, here's what I did right. Here's where I found success. It is not going to be easy. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to put in some serious hours. You're going to have to struggle. You may even be broke in the early days while you're struggling. But don't quit, don't give up, and keep pushing. Here's how I won. Here's what I did to get on top. And without that sense of accomplishment, without the maturity to say, yes, I paid a price, but here's what I did to get to the top. Here's what I did to win. Without that, there's nothing to pass on. I know there are a lot of people who feel like the only inheritance you can leave your kids is a big fat checkbook. I have listened to many very wealthy parents who have said, I worked from nothing to get what I have. One guy that I listen to on the radio on a regular basis said just yesterday, he said, I started working when I was 10. By the time I was 15, I would come home only to eat, shower, bathe, and get after it again. I had my own money. I was independently wealthy. Everything that I had, I paid for myself. Today, he's a multimillionaire. And he says, I will not curse my children by giving them the wealth that I've earned in my life. I will spend it all or give it away, because the best gift that I can give them is a work ethic that says, I will not stop until I have what I'm after. The idea. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.